when we actually had to cry uncle and go for help, we got pumped full of pills, a PTSD diagnoses, and then spent years having our lives just fall apart, And I heard the story again and again and again, and I realized like that the VA system, the conventional approach is fucked. You've been in a high-speed ejection. You are almost certainly never going to walk again. You won't be able to use your arms again, and your flying career in the military is over. My legs were flailing around so violently from that airflow that my steel-toe boots became like wrecking balls, smashing open my tib fibs and my lower legs, open leg fractures. Yeah, it's the fastest survived ejection in aviation history.
Yeah.
There's been people in the Navy that have ejected faster but are no longer with us. All that shit takes a toll on us. And in the military, I think we get an especially big dose of freaking challenges that exacerbate this stuff, just from the lifestyle that is and the kind of stuff that's done in the military. It takes a toll on us physically, mentally, emotionally, and at a spiritual level, greater way than most average civilians experience. But through ayahuasca, I came in touch with this divinity, or whatever you want to call it, something much greater than myself. It wasn't just like believing in it, it was experiencing it firsthand.
This is Alone and Unafraid. This episode is brought to you by Cadence Wealth Partners. You need to get your financial shit together, and who better to do that than a former military dude? Specifically, I'm talking about Nick O'Kelly. He's legit. Long tabber, special forces, 160th pilot. He's not your average dude. Now, I take small piles of money and I give it to him with the goal of making them bigger piles of money. We're not just talking about only managing money. We're talking about building a financial strategy, estate planning, retirement planning. We're talking 5-paragraph op order kind of shit, but for your finances. He handles all that shit. I don't want to do that. It's annoying. I want nothing to do with it.
Sounds good to me.
He also works with my CPA, and together they do all the tax strategy stuff. I've got a couple side businesses. Tyler's got a couple side hustles. You need some cats looking out for you. Cadence Wealth Partners can be those cats. They're trusted advisors. They come from our community. They're legit. Visit financeforvets.com. That's finance, the number 4 vets.com to start a conversation today. Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Break yourself, fool!
This episode is brought to you by Polestar Coffee. Head over to polestarcoffee.com, grab a bag, use offer code ALONE at checkout, and taste the difference. polestarcoffee.com. Welcome back to Alone and Unafraid, where we explore the intersections of everyday life, mental health, and mindset with ordinary people who have or are now facing incredible challenges. My name is Thad King, and I'm your host. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have the honor of welcoming a truly remarkable individual to our show, retired U.S. Navy Lieutenant Kegan Smurf Gill. He's a former F-18E model Super Hornet pilot who survived what remains the fastest ejection in naval aviation history, an astonishing 695 miles an hour. But that ejection was just the beginning. It was the catalyst for an extraordinary journey of survival, resilience, and transformation that, folks, you do not want to miss this conversation. The aftermath of that life-altering moment left Kegan with devastating injuries, including multiple traumas, a traumatic brain injury, setting him on a grueling path of over a dozen surgeries and extensive rehabilitation. But this is not only a story of survival, it's a story of relentless determination, grit, and the will to rise again. Against all odds, Kegan found his way back, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, confronting his post-traumatic stress, cognitive impairments, and the challenges of navigating a broken VA healthcare system. His path to recovery led him to groundbreaking therapies, including psychedelic-assisted treatments, which played a pivotal role in his healing. Today, he's a motivational speaker, ultra endurance athlete, devoted husband and father, and a fierce advocate for mental health and veteran wellness. Now, Kegan is sharing his incredible journey in his new book, Phoenix Revival: The Aftermath of Naval Aviation's Fastest Ejection. It's more than just a memoir. Phoenix Revival is a raw and inspiring testament to the power of the human spirit, proof that no matter how devastating the fall, we can rise, overcome, and even thrive. Folks, you do not want to miss this conversation. Please join me in welcoming the author of Phoenix Revival, Kegan Gill.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
You have the unique distinction of being the fastest ejection in naval aviation history. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's the fastest survived ejection in naval aviation history.
Yeah.
There's been people in the Navy that have ejected faster but are no longer with us. There's also an Air Force F-15 pilot who ejected faster than I did and survived, but very similar parameters. But yeah, there's this envelope inside the NATOPS flight manual for the F-18 that shows the sort of survivability window of what you're supposed to be able to survive on these Martin Baker ejection seats. And where I was at and the parameters I was at the altitude, airspeed, and dive angle, I shouldn't be here talking to you, but
yeah. And for the Army aircrew that are listening, NATOPS is the equivalent of what would be our ATM and like a -10 combined. It's a standardization manual and instruction manual of, and you have NATOPS instructors in your squadrons and so on and so forth. But for you, can you kind of set the stage? You're out off the coast of Oceania in the warning area out there. You guys are maneuvering. Can you kind of walk us through how it came to pass?
Yeah, showed up at the squadron that morning. We were operating out of NAS Oceana in Virginia Beach. I was stationed with VFA 143, the Pukin Dogs, flying F-18 Echo Super Hornets. I'd been in the squadron for just shy of a year after completing several years of flight training to become a winged aviator, select the F-18, go through that training pipeline. But now I was in a no-shit deployable fleet squadron preparing to deploy to the Middle East in what was about to become the most active combat deployment in modern warfare over the past 20 years now. We didn't know that at the time, but we were gearing up to go do some really very real shit, largely CAS, or close air support for those that aren't familiar with all the freaking military acronyms. But anyways, we're going to go out this day. It's January in Virginia Beach, and the freaking water temp's below freezing or near freezing. The water temp at the nearby buoy is at 37 degrees Fahrenheit. The air temp is below freezing. We have winds, so the ocean's pretty churned up. And my buddy Fisty's at the SDO desk standing duty that the pilots rotate through. And as a joke, he put up all the working airspace, that Whiskey 72 that you alluded to, that big warning area out over the Atlantic Ocean that we use. And underneath, he put all these marks on the board and little names on them. And as you look closer, you saw that these are all names of sharks. He used the shark tracker app on his phone to pinpoint all the locations of these actual GPS tag sharks that were out in the area. And it just so happened, on top of the cold temps, there's this friggin' 16-foot, 3,500-pound great white shark named Mary Lee directly underneath the airspace that I'm about to go fly in. So we're joking about this. He even said, this would be a terrible day to eject. And I walk on the flight, head out to the airspace, ended up doing some air-to-air refueling just to check out an ARS refueling pod that had come out of maintenance, just a big refueling store that you can strap on the bottom of a Super Hornet for organic tanking. That went smooth. And with the extra fuel and airspace, the flight lead and I broke away from the tanker jet, and we set up to do BFM, basic fighter maneuvering or air combat maneuvering, and what people probably would commonly refer to as dogfighting. So a couple or more aircraft within visual range trying to shoot each other down. In this case with simulated weapons, but other than the simulated weapons, we're really practicing this stuff as close to the real thing as possible. So it's incredibly dynamic, really hard on the body, and really pushes the limitations of your abilities as a pilot. But it was about my most favorite thing to do in the Super Hornet. We were lucky we had a a wide array of abilities in that, the jack of many trades, master of none. But freaking fighting the jet air to air was one of the coolest things we got to do.
Dumb aviation nerd question. When you were checking out that refueling pod, was it a pod on another F-18 or were you on a tanker?
No, in this case, we can tank off a tanker jets, but this was just an air rest refueling pod strapped onto the bottom of another Super Hornet from our squadron. And one of our squadron pilots was piloting that aircraft. Okay.
So it's just a drogue. I mean, I think the Hornet refuels off a drogue anyway, a high-speed drogue. And okay, I just nerd. And here's my other Super Hornet nerd question.
Yeah.
As an aviation nerd is, the original, the F-18, the intakes were curved, the engine intakes. And then when you look on the E model, they're really straight. I've always wondered, does that affect the aerodynamics and the drag that make the jet smaller because it's more angular, or is that even a thing?
I'm not certain if there's any significant difference in the aerodynamics because of the curvature or the straight intakes. I do know that the Super Hornet and Hornet are actually two completely different aircraft. They designed the Super Hornet at a time when Congress didn't want to pass a budget for creating a new fighter, but the Navy knew they needed to upgrade from the 1970s, 80s tech of the Hornet. And so the way they did that is they just kind of said that the Super Hornet was an upgraded version of the Hornet, which was
to kind of hide the weenie there,
which was a brilliant way to get it through. But they were able to get the funding for it. But it's a completely different aircraft. But one thing that on the Super Hornet, one of the things that they designed on it that does really negatively affect the aerodynamics is they've canted the pylons on the wings in a way that I think when they were doing the aerodynamics testing, they thought it would actually help improve the aerodynamics when you had a store on the wing when it was canted into what they assumed would be the relative wind. But what it does is actually it creates more drag on the Super Hornet. So we kind of jokingly call the Super Hornets it's like the fat kid of the fighter jets.
I've always heard like the Hornet pilots, the old guys that were flying like the earlier models, the E models, like a pig or like an E model F-15, that thing looks like it's roided out, but like compared to a Charlie model F-15, like that thing is just, it's a pig. But anyways, for there's friends of mine that are listening to this that are like, oh my God, why are you such an aviation dork? But fuck those guys.
Sorry, man. Me too.
Yeah. If it's about helicopters or jets, like I want to talk about it. So you're out there in the warning area. You're setting up to get the fight on. I'm assuming you guys are almost beak to beak. And how does that go down? Yeah,
we do several rounds of fighting. And on this particular day, I was practicing this nose low maneuver where I would dive the aircraft at the ocean and come back up to meet the aircraft above me. And I was trying to get this reversal timing, which was a sort of tricky thing that takes practice. And I was the kind of guy that when I wasn't very good at something, I would go out and I'd practice it as much as I could until I got good at it. And I wanted to make my worst skill my strongest one. And so that was kind of the mindset I was in that day. And we went out through and did several rounds of fighting, and we hit Joker fuel. So we had just enough fuel left for one more quick round of fighting before we had to RTB. And as we're kind of exiting the Whiskey 72, we're about 50 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach at this point, still in that Whiskey airspace. We set up a beam one another, about a mile apart from one another. We're down at 12,500 feet, so still over 2 nautical miles straight up in the sky. And we're at 450 knots, which was quite a bit faster than we would typically do this a beam set entry. Typically, you do that below 300 knots. But, we were kind of leaning forward, trying to maximize the time that we had and the little fuel we had left and get out one more quick round of fighting. And me being newer, in the back of my mind, I'm like, the ground's not an immediate concern. The flight lead calls fights on, and we pitch the jets in at each other, and we come to that merge in sort of a dive. I'm already partially inverted and nose low, so I opt to continue my roll inverted and pull the jet downward into a split S maneuver, diving the aircraft at the ocean. Now, typically a Super Hornet can do a vertical maneuver like that in less than 5,000 feet. And that's we have the saying, live by the gouge, die by the gouge. So these little shortcuts and little, cliff note variations as you're trying to digest this massive wealth of knowledge that you have to consume from the frickin' fire hose in the fighter world. But in the back of my mind, when I did my quick math at the merge, we're at 10,500 feet at that point, not fully realizing the airspeed I got up to. The way we had set up that fight, I opted to pull. And in my mind, I'm like 10,500 feet. That still gives me 500 feet above the hard deck at 5,000 feet that we use for training in case there is, something goes wrong. So in my mind, quick math, I'm good to go. And I pull that jet into a dive. And as I hit about bullseye nose low in that jet, all of a sudden, the flight control system overrides my control inputs. And you're pulling G's, so you're pulling 7.5 G's, you can feel the weight of your body and gears like 1,600 pounds. You can imagine that weight on you. Just my head and my helmet, I'm wearing the Ejecting helmet, which is this really cool sort of space age visor. Wherever I turn my head, I can see all my displays for my weapon systems, flight parameters. But if that helmet and my head on the ground weigh about 20 pounds for rough math, now at almost 8 times that, that's like having like 150 pounds just on my head.
Yeah.
And you're looking around, you're craning your neck you got to keep sight or lose the fight kind of deal. And you can just feel all that weight. And as I'm looking up, pulling the stick in my lap, all of a sudden I just feel the jet settle. I feel all that weight ease off of me. And it was like going around a sharp corner in a sports car and then having the steering wheel kick back halfway. Only instead of skidding off the road, I'm now stuck in a dive at the ocean. And this all just happens in a few seconds. Very quickly, I hear my radar altimeter going off. Altitude, knowing I just went through that 5,000 foot hard deck, which is like, oh shit, there's a training rule violation. Something's not right. I pull the throttle to idle, put the speed brake out. Stick is still in my lap. And very quickly, the ocean just rushes up at me, and I can see the ripples on the water, and the whole canopy is just being filled as I'm in this steep, steep dive. And it's very clear very quickly that I'm not getting out of this. And last second, the bitchin' Betty, the ground proximity warning system is going, pull up, pull up. There's a big arrow in the HUD. There's a big arrow in the helmet showing me to pull up. And I'm thinking, I already am fucking pulling up. And the stick is in my lap. The aircraft is not responding. That's out of control flight. And at 51 degrees nose low, 695 miles per hour or 604 knots indicated, which is equivalent to 0.95 indicated Mach, so 95% the speed of sound. At 2,000 feet above the ocean, I pulled the ejection handle. And a normal ejection, it's straight and level flight below 180 knots in ideal circumstances will still cause permanent spinal injuries, flail injuries of the pilots. This was, as we talked about earlier, way outside what was supposed to be survivable. And as I came out, you get this, initially there's a 50 G instantaneous boost as the rocket motor ignites under your ass in the seat. And that eases to a 12 to 14 G sustained rocket boost. The canopy blows away. That all happens in less than a half a second. And then I impacted the airflow at the speed of sound, or just below, what's called transonic. And that's what, back in the 40s when they were trying to break the speed of sound, that was this wall of air that the engineers doing the math were like, you cannot break the speed of sound. Yeah. That's the parasitic drag exponentially increases up to the speed of sound, and there's no way that you can get through that. And of course, the pilots were like, well, watch us, and they went out and they did it anyway. But that's where my body impacted, was that sound barrier. And it was devastating. It ripped my helmet off my head, caused a traumatic brain injury, smashed my face to hell, ripped off my mask with the helmet. I broke my C1 in my neck. I broke my left scapula, bilateral humerus fractures of my upper arms. My right humerus tore through my right brachial artery, causing internal bleeding. My left forearm shattered the radius and ulna and severed the median nerve that controls my left hand. The brachial plexus nerve was damaged from the spinal compression that controls a lot of the upper body. The gear on my vest, I ejected so fast that the gear on my vest ripped off. All my signaling equipment, my radio, my dry suit that I was wearing to protect me from the frigid ocean water shredded apart, shredding the neck and the cuffs and the sleeves. my legs were flailing around so violently from that airflow that my steel toe boots became like wrecking balls, smashing open my tib fibs and my lower legs, open leg fractures. Now chunks of my bone are falling out of me into the ocean, chumming the water for Mary Lee, who's in my mind down there circling around.
So you ejected, you're 51 degrees. 51 degrees. Let's see. That's 51 degrees nose down the wrong way. So you're ejecting like this way instead of, or I guess more like this way, right? You're not.
So yeah, I was in a dive about like this. So I'm coming out as sort of a sideways angle.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not ejecting straight up.
Right.
And I'm not ejecting like horizontally, but sort of a diagonal angle upward.
Do you know, Dr. Ryan? Have you ever heard of her? Daphne Pole Ryan. She's like a spinal doctor. She's always visits a lot of naval aviators, but she has this whole thing about spines and stuff. And if you guys are interested, you should check out. She's on LinkedIn and she has a bunch of cool stuff. But when you ejected, what's that do to your spine? Like, I'm assuming it's like like this is me crushing a can. Yeah. But I mean, it's got to compress your spine, right? Yeah,
it compresses the spine, and people oftentimes permanently lose a little bit of their stature. And, you know, I was already a short dude, but it didn't help.
Yeah. And for the people that don't understand what Kegan's talking about is the immersion suit or a dry suit or Mustang suit, depending on who made it. But these are like neoprene. They have a neoprene neck dam, like a wetsuit. They're hot as shit, man. You're sweating your ass off in there.
Yeah, we always bitch about putting them on. Like, it's smelly, it's sweaty. And when you're on the ground in them, you're just sweating your ass off.
Yeah, you're just covered in sweat. And then, you know, we'd be flying. And actually, we were talking about this before. Is I'm fairly certain we were up in vacapes on that day, because I remember we were out bouncing on an oiler doing our deck landing stuff. And I remember them talking about an F-18 just crashed. And I was telling you we were going back to Chambers to get some fuel. And but I remember just thinking, like, holy shit, man, like that guy's going to eject and then go in the water. And people think Virginia is, I mean, I guess arguably it's technically part of the South in the United States. We do have some UK and Australian listeners. So for the folks that don't know, that's mid-Atlantic coast. Mm-hmm. And it's arguably part of the South. I'd argue that people from Alabama wouldn't think that, but I mean, technically it's the Mason-Dixon line goes through there, but Virginia is cold as hell in the wintertime. I mean, like really cold.
Yeah. And that water flowing from the Chesapeake, you know, is coming from further up north, and that water is really frigid.
So when you came out and you've ejected, I mean, I'm assuming you're completely knocked out. Like I'm assuming you don't remember any of this. Yeah.
So the last linear memory I had was right before I ejected, just seeing the ocean rushing up at me and getting that oh shit feeling. But from then on through this story, you know, has largely been recreated through the investigation process that went down afterwards. And I did, you know, over the course of several years when I was dealing with night terrors, I would get flashbacks of being in the ocean, experiencing being drowned alive and being pulled under by my parachute and just the terror that I was experiencing. But through the most of this, while I was visibly conscious when they found me, I was, you know, my mind had largely just shut down.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that you hit that water, you go in the water, you know, and for the folks that don't understand, is on the F-18 is the ejection handle between your seat or
between your legs.
Between your legs.
The F-14s had that curtain pull, and I think there was a lot of guys getting really bad flail injuries because it puts you in a really shitty position to eject. So they ended up putting it back down.
That's what happened to Goose. You know, he
hit the canopy.
Yeah, he hit the canopy, man. Like, so I'm sure you've never heard that joke before.
No.
Never
what's Top Gun?
Yeah.
Has anybody seen that movie?
Yeah. You know, fun fact, that movie came out when I was probably like 8 or 9. And I went to see it at the theater, and I walked out of that theater and I was like, I'm going to be a naval aviator, like for sure.
Talk about a recruiting tool.
Yeah. I mean, like, and the Army tried to make a version of Top Gun. They called it Firebirds. It's the worst movie ever made. Have you ever seen it?
That one. I've seen Iron Eagle, which was
Doug Masters and Chappie. Doug Masters was the high school kid that I'm an 80s kid, but the Army made one called Firebirds, and it's about Apaches, and Nicolas Cage is the main guy, and they go down to Colombia to fight this guy named Eric Stoltz, who flies an MD 500, like an armed little bird, and he's like on the team of the drug people, whatever you call them, narcotics guys. Anyway, it's a horrible movie, and it's not anywhere in the ballpark of Top Gun. But I did always want to be a naval aviator. I always wanted to be either an A6 pilot or an F-18 pilot. And then I went to college and it didn't work out, and I joined the Army. And then 24 years later, I got out as a helicopter pilot. But there's a special place in my heart for jets and for my naval aviator friends. You didn't hear that.
I actually first was going to join the Coast Guard because I read this book called The Last Run, all about running rescue missions up in Alaska.
Oh, really?
I was like, those guys are crazy. I want to go do that. But the wait for the board was like 6 months. So I was like, oh, I'll put I'll see what happens with this Navy thing.
Did you go to the Naval Academy? Or where did you go to ROTC?
I went through OCS.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was a flight instructor in college, and then I flew for about a year as a corporate pilot after. And I had a buddy who was applying to go to Navy OCS. He had been a prior enlisted Air Force maintainer. And he's like, hey, man, you should put in a package. And I was like, what? Doesn't your dad have to be an admiral? Don't you have to go to the Naval Academy? Like, I just didn't know how it worked. He's like, no, man, go over to the Air Warriors website and research it. And sure enough, I did. And the rest is history. But
did you go to like Purdue or North Dakota or somewhere, or were you just doing as a CFI?
I went to a little community college up in northern Michigan called Northwestern Michigan College. Freaking outstanding flight program that is now like really hard to get into. But it's a community college, but it's in an area that attracts some really incredible professors because it's a place that people like to retire. And so, the guy teaching our systems classes and a lot of our aviation class he was a Huey gunship pilot, Vietnam dude. He was one of the guys that first set up the Seawolves, sort of like the predecessor to the 160th.
Yeah.
He was a test pilot. He flew he had like 7 mishaps. He survived miraculously, just a like incredible human being. And there was several people like that at the college. And so I was really fortunate to get that experience.
So you got the whole experience down in Pensacola with your briefcase and March. Do they still do that with the briefcases?
So by the time I went through, we were going through OCS in Newport, Rhode Island.
Okay.
So we traded the heat for the cold, and but very similar. We never got to karate fight any of our drill instructors, like Officer and a Gentleman, which I was bummed about. But
I want your DOR, mayo, mayonnaise. That's a great movie. If you haven't seen that, people go watch it.
Classic.
Yeah. So you're in. So let's get back to the crash. You hit the water. Your immersion suit or your dry suit's probably I'm assuming there's massive internal injuries. Did the dry suit? Yeah. I'm assuming the cold water in the dry suit's helping you because all your blood is pooling to your internal organs to save your life. And,
once they got me out, which was, there's a whole hazard report on the whole rescue effort, but eventually a Navy H-60 Seahawk helicopter got me out and back to the Level 1 Trauma Center in Norfolk, right by where you were hanging out that day at Chambers Field.
Yeah, over at Centara.
Yep, yeah. Centara, Norfolk General. And luckily they had just the surgical dream team on that day. But when they got me in there, they took my core body temperature, and my core body temp was down to 87 degrees Fahrenheit. So I was like on the verge of certain death from hypothermia, but they also said, had my dry suit actually functioned properly, I would have bled to death way before anybody got there, because it was about a 2-hour wait. Depending on which report I've looked at, it's between an hour and a half and 2 hours that I was in the water before getting into that H60. And had I not had the severe hypothermia, while that almost killed me, it preserved me from bleeding to death. And they think it also preserved my brain function.
So is there a SAR bird like ready to launch when you guys are launching and recovering out of Oceania, or is it just kind of a whoever's available type thing?
Yeah, it seemed like it was just, they put out that search and rescue call on guard. My flight lead coordinated this rescue effort, and the fumes that he had left, that was really incredible. He got a fishing vessel over to my position, and he got a Coast Guard vessel heading my way, as well as 2 Navy Seahawks, one off a nearby aircraft carrier that actually arrived first. They had actually been instructed to bring me back to the aircraft carrier when they got me out, thinking we'll get them to care sooner, but I don't think they realized the extent of my injuries. And so that first rescue swimmer jumped in and actually swam past my position. Meanwhile, another H-60 from HSC 28 was operating out of Norfolk. They were actually geared up to go do some sort of weapons exercise, I think with the SEAL teams that day, and got the distress call and ended up beelining it to my position. And they're the ones that actually got me out. And another crazy twist was the rescue swimmer that was on that helicopter, Cheech. The week prior, there was a Navy MH-53 Sea Dragon, one of these big ass heavy lift helicopters, went down and very near to where I had just gone down on this day. And when they went down to this onboard fire, the protocol or the policy at the time was anybody that's in an aircraft accident has to be placed onto a backboard before they're lifted into the helicopter in case they have a spinal injury. Well, that seems good at first thought, but because it took so long to get every member of the crew out of that icy cold water, several members of the crew perished from hypothermia.
Jeez.
And so Cheech is coming off this hell week from the week prior where a bunch of these people died he was trying to rescue. And he's already suited back up, ready to jump in and save my ass. And he made the game time decision to just bring me up without that. And it was a good call because I was on the verge of death from that hypothermia, and I couldn't be in that water any longer.
Was he in 28? Was he from HSC 28?
He was, yeah.
Yeah. If I remember right, they're out chambers. They have like an octopus or something as like their squadron patch.
Yeah, I think it is an octopus.
Anyways, random details that don't matter, but
yep, I think you're right.
Those guys are down there. So he decides to forgo the backboard. Did they use like a Skedco, or I mean, I don't know if you remember how they got you up, or did you just come up with him like in a Stokes litter or something like that, or?
I don't remember exactly how they got me up. I was pretty out of it, but I know that they didn't take the time to put me on the backboard.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they take you to the level 1 trauma center, you know, I mean, 80, what'd you say? 87 degrees.
My core body temp. And that was after being in a heated helicopter cabin for a bit as we rode over to the hospital, but freaking cold.
Holy shit. I mean, like, you've got to think in your head now, like thinking back on all that stuff, like there is a plan for Kegan Gill. like there's no way.
Yeah, it was
that you would go through that.
It was a wake up call.
Yeah. So
it was, you know, it was like miracle after miracle that occurred to keep me alive.
And I think what's interesting about your story is the ejection to me and the accident is not really the story. The story is everything that comes afterwards, and we're going to get into it. But I also think it's miraculous that you got back up on flight status, right? I mean, you got back in the jet.
Yeah. I underwent over a week in an induced coma, as they did over 12 different surgical procedures. You know, they had to salvage my extremities from amputation using fasciotomies. They rebuilt my skeleton with titanium rods and steel plates. You know, they had to pump the water out of my lungs. They had to do multiple blood transfusions. My kidneys were shutting down from rhabdo, from the overwhelming amount of tissue breakdown. But, through the course of that week, they kind of put me back together again. And I spent another week in a non-induced coma where they didn't know if I was going to come to. But I eventually did. I woke up in the ICU and I didn't know where I was or what had happened. I was really loopy between the head injury and all the medications they had me on, the friggin' Dilaudid and fentanyl and whatever else they were pumping me full of. I was out of it. But I also realized that I was paralyzed. I thought they had tied me down to the bed or something, but my limbs just wouldn't respond. And eventually the docs and the medical staff came in just to lay it out straight for me and said, hey, here's what's happened. You've been in a high-speed ejection. You are almost certainly never going to walk again. You won't be able to use your arms again, and your flying career in the military is over. And there was a fire that lit up inside me that was like, fuck that, I'm going to prove you wrong. And so I spent the next 2 years, I spent 3 months living as an inpatient at the Poly Trauma Center in Richmond, Virginia, undergoing just day in, day out therapies, just trying to get enough function back so I could get around on a walker. I ended up doing more surgeries. I had to overcome prescription drug addiction to all the opioids they had pumped me full of and all this other shit for pain management. I mean, I was on just a wide spectrum of medications from amitriptyline, tramadol, trazodone, oxycodone, OxyContin, gabapentin. But eventually I was able to get off all that shit. I really hit the gym hard as I was trying to fight that addiction and replace it with my addiction to the gym. And that got me back in shape. I had to go through an investigation through a FNAB, a Field Naval Aviator Evaluation Board. And fortunately, it ruled in my favor and gave me the ability to go back to fly if I could get my body back working and get an upchit for my medical. But through another miracle, I went through the NAMI waiver process and got a freaking stack of medical waivers.
You didn't get the NAMI whammy?
Dude, luckily, once they've invested, how many millions of dollars it takes to train you as a Super Hornet pilot, then the NAMI whammy gets a little bit different than your initial NAMI whammy going in. And there was a lot of support from the medical community to get me back flying. And really, I was doing great. I mean, I was able to max out the Navy PRT again. I was literally running circles around most of the members of my command, and they're like, holy shit, this guy's like back. And so I got the opportunity to go back and fly Super Hornets. And that's sort of where like the Disney happy ending of the story would be. But really, that was just the beginning of the most challenging part of all of this, which was as I started to have to deal with the residual effects of traumatic brain injury and mental health.
When you got back in the jet the first time, what was that like? I mean, and I don't think people really understand the balls that takes to get in. And it doesn't seem like a big deal, but as again, as a helo guy and doing as an instructor, I've had to do multiple validation evals to see if the guy could fly the aircraft after a catastrophic Class A mishap where there was loss of life. And how, and I might have this wrong, but I'm assuming at some level you were shitting your pants a little bit, or am I completely off on that? Like getting back into that jet and strapping it on for the first time.
I had been working at that goal over the course of those 2 years. And that was like my carrot, was like imagining myself back in my flight suit, strapping back into that jet. And so it was incredibly it was like getting back on the horse that bucked me off, man. It was like, it felt so good. There was definitely some apprehension, especially like doing low levels and stuff. I was like, it took me a while before I was like, I'm really going to like get after it again. But I was so thrilled to be back that I think that kind of overruled any fear that might've been there for the most part. I remember one of the first things I did when I went back out is I went out to the airspace and I did a nose low maneuver at the ocean again. I was like, I want to see if I can handle it. and what's going to happen. And I did it, and it was all good. And it was like, all right, this is going to be okay.
Do you start out in the does the Super Hornet, like the normal attack ones, have tandem seating, or is that only the growlers?
So they do have a couple at the training squadrons. They have a couple what called FTs. Okay. So it's a 2-seat F model Super Hornet, and in the back seat it actually has all the flight controls and everything, just like you would have in the front. Which normally F models the back seats for the Wizzo, so it's a whole different setup back there with no flight controls. But there's a couple of those at the reg, and so you do a very robust simulator syllabus, and then there's actually only just a handful of flights in that FT model before you're soloing. I think there's maybe only 3 or 4 flights where you have somebody in the back with a stick. Man. And really the simulators are so good that they really prepare you. So you get back up on flight status, and you're out there, you're flying. When did you actually, can I back up real quick? When you were in the hospital and you were staying at Richmond, you were married at that point? No, I wasn't married. Okay. I had a crazy ass girlfriend. Everybody did. But no, I wasn't married.
Yeah. If we just had a guy on,
you know the hot crazy matrix.
Yeah. Was she just, if your wife is listening, just kidding. She was, it was like ugly. But I know.
No, I talked about her to my wife. She knows.
Well, I had a guy, actually another dude that knows Nick O'Kelly, this Dave Fielding, and he's the episode before this one, and his book is called Into the Darkness, and he has a hot crazy Matrix girl story in there too. So I think everybody's got that level of every. If you haven't had that, are you really living? Like, have you really like you can't appreciate the good ones until you have the crazy. It's an experience
every young man.
Yeah. It's a rite of passage.
That's true. Yeah. It's like an experience every young man needs to experience just at least once.
Yeah. You don't want to stay in that zone very long, but you need to get.
No, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, it's not sustainable at all. So, because I was always wondering when folks go into, long-term hospital stays like that, what the family ends up doing. And, there's things like the Fisher House and Ronald McDonald House and all that stuff. But I mean, it is ultra taxing on the family. So in a way, like, thank God you didn't, your wife didn't have to deal with that. But as we're going to hear, I think your wife has really had to deal with some stuff. And that's really where the story to me gets super interesting. So you get back up, and did you go back to your old squadron, or did you go to another air wing?
I went to a different squadron. I was still back in the F-18 Echo model, but I ended up going out to VFA 136 Nighthawks in Lemoore, California.
Okay.
And I'd been back flying Super Hornets for about a year and a half, and there had been some little mental lapses that I had noticed, but I really just shook it off. I'm like, I'm just recovering from this big thing. I'll be all right. But I went on a flight. We were on a detachment at Tyndall Air Force Base doing in Wessup, which is like a live fire missile exercise there.
Yeah. They got those drones out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went out and I did a flight. I got to shoot a AIM-9 Mike Sidewinder heat-seeking missile at a drone, and then broke away and got to go do some dissimilar air combat training. So dogfighting with an F-22 Raptor that was there from the Hawaiian Raptor Squadron. And I came back from that flight, and I had vivid memories of fighting the Raptor, and just like, it was like a childhood dream come true to see this thing up in the sky with me that I had just like drooled on at air shows as a kid. And now to be up fighting it, it was really incredible. But as I was in the debrief watching my tapes of the missile shoot, I realized that I was like, there were the big memory lapses, and also a lot of confusion just on the basic symbology of these displays that I had become very familiar with. And I realized something wasn't quite right. And I just kind of shrugged it off, tried to get some sleep that night, and I couldn't sleep. I was getting really panicked. I was just like on high alert all night. The next day I just tried to tough it out again, but it wasn't getting better. And that second night when I got back to the hotel, I sat on the end of the bed and the whole room just spun around me from vertigo. My heart was just racing. There's no chance I was going to sleep. I was just like in high alert, hypervigilant mode, like freaking out. And I remember I tried to set my alarm clock on my phone because I had to get up in the morning and fly. And I couldn't figure out how to do the mental math just to set an alarm clock. And so I was like, something is not right. And I reluctantly contacted the squadron safety officer. And fortunately, there was a dive base like 20 minutes away.
Yeah, I went to dive school there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Naval Diving Salvage Training Center, Panama City, Florida. Yeah.
Kick ass. There had been a number of issues in the F-18 community with decompression sickness. We had this faulty environmental control system issue that was causing rapid cabin fluctuation of pressure. And so it had gotten to the point that they even started putting hyperbaric chambers on the aircraft carriers.
Wow.
For when guys would come back with DCS, they could rush them in. And for those that don't know what DCS is, decompression sickness, scuba divers will often experience this coming up from depth too quickly. The little nitrogen bubbles can come out of solution in your blood. And if you get those little bubbles in your joints, it can be very painful. They call it the bends. Yeah. But if you get those bubbles in your brain, it can block off the flow of oxygen to your brain and it can kill you. It can cause basically like aneurysm or stroke-like symptoms.
Yeah, arterial gas embolism will,
And so the thought was maybe one of these little bubbles have gotten in his brain and is causing dysfunction. And so luckily they treated me overnight in that facility. I felt a little bit better, but something still wasn't right. And so the dive doc there was like, hey, when you get back to Lemoore from this detachment, I really urge you to go in and see the flight surgeon and talk to them about what's going on, considering your history, And when I got back, the whole way back, I was just this was all racing through my mind. Like the last thing you want to do when you have these high-speed jobs in aviation, especially, like you don't want to go talk about something being wrong with your mental health. Like that's a surefire way to lose your upshit. That's a surefire way to lose your security clearance. But I knew something was so badly wrong that there was no way I was going to be able to safely operate the jet. So I reluctantly went in to see medical. And very soon after, I ended up with the delayed onset PTSD diagnoses, and everything just bit off on that PTSD diagnoses. And in hindsight, there's this very clear traumatic brain injury from the ejection that was likely now exacerbated by this type 2 DCS incident. But really the conventional treatments don't look at that. And especially in the military, they completely overlooked that and instead bit off on this PTSD thing, which is, let's talk about how you're feeling. Yeah. How are your emotions, and to sit and talk therapy and go through exposure therapy and cognitive processing therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy and all this shit where you're just talking about your emotions and they kind of make it sound like this is all just in your head. Like this is just an emotional thing. It was so frustrating because I was like, there's something wrong. It's not just emotions. It's not like I can just get over this. But unfortunately that's the way that conventional mental health system works. It's not addressing the real issue. And now it's like the real issue is the hardware is dysfunctional. The hardware in my brain, the physiology of my brain has been damaged. The cells of my brain have been damaged. Information is not flowing properly. It's dysfunctional. And it was like trying to update the software before you fix the hardware. And that's all too common.
Do you know Dr. Mark Gordon? Do you know him?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of his. He wrote one of the forewords for my book. But him and I have been keeping in touch for a long time. He's really helped open my eyes to the whole relationship between PTSD and traumatic brain injury. I think he's been on like 6 episodes of Joe Rogan at this point. Yeah. He's awesome.
I had no idea who he was. And he dinged me on LinkedIn, like out of nowhere. And he's like, hey, dude, read this. Because I had put some stuff about TBI and like, why the fuck are we this way? And like, because I did the whole talk therapy when I was in the Army. I was in a high a high performing organization that we had command sponsored psychologists, that certain positions in the command would have to go after deployments and talk to the psych. And I actually did get something out of her. Like, she was a really good psychologist, and mostly because she didn't talk. It was just me talking, but I don't know that we ever fixed the problem. And this is really recent. Like, this is like a month, like right after Christmas, like the 27th of December, I was in Amsterdam, and I get a LinkedIn from this guy, Dr. Gordon. And I'm like, and I read it, and he's like, hey man, like, I kind of saw some stuff you posted. You might get something out of this. And it was an article that he wrote. And I read the article, and I'm like, dude, what do I need to do? And he's like, watch this YouTube video. And he sent me this documentary. And then I watched the documentary, and I'll put it in the show notes for folks that want to watch it. And then I filled out the little form. So I'm working through that process to go do his protocols. So nice. Super excited about that. But for the folks that don't understand what Kegan, or what Kegan's talking about, is that your brain is actually, there could be inflammation, but because of, chronic trauma, and that could be from things such as playing football. I mean, I was a kid, I played football all the way through high school, and in the 80s and 90s, like, concussions were like, I can distinctly remember kids in like 6th grade getting concussions. Oh yeah. And the coach was like, yeah, walk it off. And then they would be back playing like the next day out there. Or in high school, kids would get, I can remember one time I get hit so hard, I'm fairly certain I had a concussion. I was seeing black spots, and like, I threw up. And I remember, like, my dad was a referee, and we just didn't know back then. My dad was at the game, and he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I can do this, because I didn't want to seem like a little bitch, so. Right. And then I ended up becoming I was a mortar guy. Oh yeah. And so now
TBIs every day, man.
Yeah. And I was a gunner. So an ammo bearer. So like my left ear, I can't really hear that well out of, and I have hearing aids, and they're like, why? That's weird that only your left ear. And I'm like, yeah, because I put the rounds in the tube on the left side, and but that's concussion, and from parachuting, all these little tiny traumas add up over time. And I had no idea. And, you think about carrier pilots, when you hit that catapult and you take off, or you hit that wire, what is it? You try to get the 3-wire. Is that the one you want to hit?
It depends on the boat, which one you target.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's typically a 2 or 3 wire you're targeting.
Yeah. And that is extremely rough, not to mention your spine.
It's brain injury, man.
But it's your brain is slamming the inside of your skull. Yeah. And that's what Dr. Gordon talks about. And I was shocked because he was just on Joe Rogan, and I was like, holy shit, he's on Joe Rogan. Like, holy, like, how did I not know this? But yeah, he's a really cool dude. And I'll put it in the show notes if you guys want to watch his documentary. But yeah, it's crazy. So in talking about that conventional talk therapy, I've also, and Tyler's sick today, by the way. So that's why he's not here. He's at home drinking his Milkies and nursing his sickness. But, we've both done that, and sometimes it's good. There's good stuff that comes out of it, but by and large, and we talked about this with another guy, you would get a kick out of this guy, Adam Majors. He's an Army combat vet who's turned into a psychologist. And his thing is, the VA doesn't know people are just guessing, and they're not looking at the root cause. And I think we're in a time right now, and guys like you and your book are really helping folks to realize that, hey, we're at a confluence of knowledge. We've had, 20 years of warfare to kind of see what the effects are, but now we're going, we're going to open the aperture a little bit bigger. And it's actually a lot more stuff. You don't have to be in direct combat to have these issues, because it's a hardware problem, like you said. So So when did they decide that they're going to med board you out of the Navy? Like, what was the impetus to do that?
Yeah, initially there was hope that maybe we could do some of this conventional stuff and things would get better, but it was, things continued to degrade pretty rapidly to where I went from like emotional, I wasn't the same person. I remember my wife talking like, you were not the same person anymore. And then that kind of just continued to get exacerbated as that underlying physiology in my brain was not actually being addressed. It was just time was passing and that chaos was just still there. And then they started throwing meds at it. SSRIs initially, they were giving me sleep meds to help me sleep. They tried this medication called quetiapine or Seroquel, which is it's a heavy duty antipsychotic, but it can be given at low dose to deal with really persistent insomnia, which I was just not sleeping anymore. I could not shut down my nervous system to get into rest and digest and fall asleep. And so that was the thought was, hey, if we can just get him some sleep, he'll get better. But causing a drug-induced form of unconsciousness is not restful sleep.
No.
And as time went on, I just needed more of the meds. And as I got more of the meds, I had more of the side effects. And meanwhile, that chaos was just still brewing and I was not sleeping. And so it got to the point where I went from, sort of paranoid and hypervigilant to, I thought I was living in the Truman Show. Like I thought that everybody was actors around me and I thought the radio would come on. It was like trying to send me a secret message or something. And like that degraded into full on psychoses where I thought I was being hunted by government assassins. I was afraid to go near the windows in our house. My wife would be cooking dinner. We just had our little boy. He was just a couple months old, if that. And so she's trying to take care of a newborn baby boy. And now she's got a full grown adult running around the house, hiding from the windows. She'd be cooking dinner. I'd run up and I would dump the food off the pan right into the garbage. And I'd say, they're poisoning us. You can't eat that. I stopped eating. I stopped drinking because I thought I was being poisoned. Well, I was being poisoned,
with alcohol.
But it was in these FDA approved pills that I'd been prescribed. And that stuff was fucking me up worse and worse. And as time went on, my wife, she did everything she could to keep me out of an inpatient psych facility, which the base psychology team was really advocating like, hey, we need to get this guy as an inpatient. Like you can't be taking care of him anymore. But my wife is a trauma nurse. So she had dealt with psychosis before in the ER. And she knew what was going to happen if I got put into one of those facilities. She knew it's not a good place to send people. And so she really did a lot to keep me out. But eventually I had to go through that medical board as all this stuff just continued not to get me better. Now at that point, early on in this, had I seen Dr. Mark Gordon or Doc Kirk Parsley or Dr. Michael Lewis or gotten access to some of these treatments I've gotten now, I think they could have reversed this stuff. And I'd probably still be flying Super Hornets for the Navy. But instead I went down this path that so many other people get put down in the conventional mental health treatment system, to where I was just out of my mind. I was eventually medically retired after a fight through what I call the bureaucratic equivalent of the Indiana Jones Temple of Doom. Like the whole med board process was just riddled with shit to derail, even with the support of my command, the medical staff, like a massive amount of medical records. It was still just a complete shit show. But eventually got out, moved back to Northern Michigan with my family. And that same treatment continued at the VA. It was just go in and talk to somebody and then take all these pills that just kept increasing and increasing. And I just kept getting worse and worse. It was within a few days of having my dose of quetiapine increased from 300 milligrams a night up to 450 milligrams per night, which is a freaking heroic dose of this shit. My wife came home from a job interview and she found me just rustling around the house. I was completely naked. I had shaved off my hair in chunks. For some reason, I had shaved off my eyebrows, my facial hair. And the only thing I had on was a black plastic garbage bag tied around my neck like a cape, because I thought I was going to go out into the Michigan weather and fight crime like a superhero. And she drove me to the emergency room. I was just in full-blown out-of-body psychoses, traveling through time and space. Like, I'm pretty sure my soul had departed my body and went somewhere else. And after a couple days there, I was transferred by ambulance down to Battle Creek VA inpatient psychiatric facility. And I came to inside a freaking hard floored room in that facility as I became more lucid. What I witnessed, and I'm not talking about the things I saw in and out of psychoses, but the real things that were going on in this facility were just abysmal treatment of American veterans in ways that are not healing whatsoever. In fact, the way that people are treated in these facilities exacerbates their issues. One, you're confined inside a small facility and you can't sleep. When you're on one-to-one care in a psychosis, the policy is every 15 minutes, the staff has to come into your room with a flashlight and shine a flashlight in your face to make sure you're not hurting yourself. And it's a difficult place to sleep to begin with because there's all these other veterans dealing with severe mental health issues, in and out of psychoses, yelling and screaming up and down the hallways, people bursting into your room. Everything is hard concrete walls and tile floors. So everything echoes in the whole place. So even just people walking up and down the hallways with the keys on their waists wakes you up. And so you can't sleep. The food is just abysmal quality, ultra processed junk. There's not fresh fruits or vegetable or decent quality anything. The water that comes out of the tap smells like it came out of a broken hot tub. In order to make it palatable, they load it up with artificially colored, artificially sweetened raspberry lemonade tea mix.
This Crystal Light
is exactly what it was. Is Crystal Light. Yeah. And so you're not eating well, you're not sleeping. You were lucky if you got to go outside once a week into a concrete yard that was surrounded by high-rise brick buildings and 8 to 10 foot metal fencing on all the perimeters of there's no connection to nature. There's no sunlight. In prison. You're in prison, man. Like if I were to describe, hey, where am I? This is prison. And dude, like there's even a dynamic between the staff and the veterans because you're dressed in prison scrubs and the staff members are dressed in white lab coats. So there's this like Stanford prison experiment.
That's what I was exactly thinking.
And there was a lot of really good staff there that really cared about the people, but there's also people there that, when people are put into positions of authority and that kind of dynamic, especially with people in psychoses where it's very easy to forget that they're still a human being, despite this guy's got chunks of hair shaved off and his eyebrows are missing. There's just a natural dynamic that occurs where you just get treated like you're no longer a human being. And now going through the military, you get a little taste of survival training and what it would be like to be a prisoner of war, where you take perfectly healthy, physically, mentally robust young military members and you put them through, a week of this kind of training where you're confined, sleep deprived, treated less than human, malnourished, and perfectly healthy people will start to experience visual and auditory hallucinations, delusional thinking just from the sleep deprivation alone. Now you take guys who are already in a psychosis, who've been through hell with dealing with whatever they're dealing with after the military. A lot of these guys are coming in off the streets, and you do the same stuff to them. Like, what are we doing? Yeah. And you know what the answer is it drives everybody on to pharmaceuticals. Yeah. And that's one thing that they had an abundance of. Yeah. Just all these psych meds. Even if they just cut out one of your psych meds, it probably could have afforded you a high quality meal every single day, which would have done so much more to restore your health.
Yeah. I feel like the VA in particular, and it's weird because some people have good experiences with, like my wife, she's a veteran. She's had a really good experience with the VA. My experience with the VA and Tyler's experience with the VA is nothing short of like the best way I could describe it is hot garbage. And, and like, this is for real. Like I go to see my VA doc and she's a nice lady. She never gets up from her chair. She has never given me like a physical exam or like felt my glands or like, the little knee thing, like they took the little hammer on your knee, whatever that's called, reflex thing. She's never done that. And her first thing is, what can I do you for today? And I'm like, oh, I got, like this joint pain. Okay. Doesn't say doesn't ask about it. She just immediately starts typing, okay, I'm going to give you 800 milligram Motrin. Okay, I got this. Oh, your blood work a little bit. Like, we're going to put you on cholesterol meds. And then it is sanctioned drug dealing, and it is absolutely horrible. And don't even get me started on the mental health. Tyler and I are running this campaign called Defund the VA, and the idea behind it is we don't really want to defund the VA, but we want to bring attention to the VA sucks and needs to be seriously overhauled. And remember, and you might have been too young to remember this, but when the war first started in like the early 2000s, the VA was like, the VA has always been shit. And then they're like, we're going to make the VA better and it's going to be the best. And maybe it was the beginning of Trump's administration where they were going to reform the VA. Dude, that place is still a piece of shit. And like the VA clinic here in Florida is ultra nice. I mean, it's cutting edge, beautiful in there. They
love the optics of it. They love to make it look like it's, a really great facility, but that's where all the money goes, not into the actual patient care. And there's a lot of good people that work for the VA, and I'm not here to harp on the VA. There's some benefit from it, no doubt, but do they need to get their shit together? Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the big problems they're having is, I've talked to guys, admiral flight surgeons who've been at the tops of these meetings where decisions are being made on the policy. Like, how do we make it better? We could make it better. And they said that at the end of the day, the pharmaceutical industry controls the VA policy. It has become such a cash cow for them that they have effectively gained control of the VA system. And so they do everything they can to get their products pushed onto the veterans. And it's become a business. It's really what it's become.
And if you would have, if we would have been talking about this 10 or 15 years ago, people would have been like, you guys are conspiracy theorists nuts. But now,
dude, all the conspiracy theories are coming true.
They're all true the whole time. And so of course they're going to push these things on. Of course this is happening. And we're not advocating that we really defund the VA, but what we're saying is, hey man, instead of spending $1 bajillion on that super nice hospital, maybe we could give this, I don't know if a direct payment is a method, but at least maybe some insurance where the veteran can choose where they get care, and we get, because a lot of the doctors in the VA are really good people and they're trying to do their best, but there are other doctors in the VA that are camping out, doing the bare minimum. These are the C students in medical school that they don't want to do anything. They just want a steady 9 to 5 paycheck, and they don't want to deal with malpractice and all that stuff, so they go to the VA. And I'm, again, I'm not saying it's
not
the
all
worst.
Doctors are created equal. That's for sure.
Exactly. So my question to you is, you're in prison, in the VA prison. What was the length of time from the time that you were a naval aviator to where you're a prisoner? Like what was the time span of that?
So I started going into psychoses, I think about maybe 6 months before I was officially medically retired. And in that time, they allowed me to just move to Michigan with my family. I was just on kind of like permanent leave.
Right.
But from the time I was officially retired from active duty on December 28th, 2018. And I think it was early February that I went into psychoses, to this point where I had to be hospitalized.
So, and this is what it's hard for me to wrap my brain around is, and this might offend some people, and don't listen to the show if it offends you, but you are a naval aviator. Pilots are clearly intelligent folks. Typically they're going to be high performers in a lot of things. They're not always, but often type A personalities that are very boisterous and go-getters. And now you're arguably an inmate in a system that you can't check yourself out. You can't leave. So that makes you a prisoner,
which is nuts. I was voluntarily admitted to this facility. I hadn't committed any crime, but when I tried to leave, I was not allowed to leave. When I saw what was happening in this facility and was outraged by it and said, I want to go home, this is not a place to heal, I was not allowed to leave. and they confined me in that place to the point where I planned an escape. I was stockpiling food. I was creating weapons. I was getting warm clothing. And my plan was I was going to pull the fire alarm. And then when they let us out for the fire, those of us with the wherewithal that weren't full up freaking zombies, as I call them, which was a vast majority of the people in there, are just like, they're so drugged up on this shit that they're just, they'll walk into the room, they'll eat, but their eyes are blank, man. They're no longer a human hardly at all, man. Like, they've just been crushed by the drugs. But my thought was, those of us that wanted to, we could run into the woods and we could get away from that place. And that was how bad it was. It was like full on like SEER school skills coming up, man. Cause it was abysmal, man.
Small victories.
We were prisoners of the war on mental health that's going on in our country. And it's not just the VA that's like this. This is pretty much any state run mental health facility. Unless you can afford $60,000+ to send your loved one to a private treatment facility for this kind of stuff, like, this is what you get. It's shit. And it's run by the pharmaceutical industry that just wants to profit off of you.
Did you ever feel, was there ever a moment during this whole time that you thought, like, why me? I was a fighter pilot and now I'm an inpatient prisoner. Why the fuck did this happen to me? Was there any moments of like self-doubt and kind of self-loathing, or what was that like? Because when you lose that identity or did you have any issues with losing your identity as a pilot, or were those two meshed together, or were that pretty...
even while I was still going through the medical board, you know, I felt like I was a piece of shit. I was like, I'm letting everybody in my command down. Like, we were so short staffed. We had about half as many pilots as we should. There's a chronic understaffing going on in the military. It's probably even worse now than it was when I was in. They just can't get enough qualified people in, and it's causes a huge burden on everybody. You're doing the job of like 3 or 4 different people, and still expected to perform at high levels with the flying, you know? And so when I couldn't do my job anymore, I knew that put a huge burden on my squadron that was already like on the brink of freaking disaster. And I felt like a piece of shit. And I went to a really dark place. Like, all these people that put their beliefs in me to get me back flying after all this. And now I've just got something that's an emotional thing, you know, the way it was being, you know, now I know it was a lot more than that. But at the time I was like, this is just in my head. Like, why can't I just get over it? This is my emotions. Like, why can't I just stop being a pussy and get back in the jet and be fine? And it got to the point where, you know, my wife and my baby boy were asleep next to me. And I had a Glock 19 in the end table of my bed next to where we slept. And I started to take the gun out, and I was thinking, what is the gun oil going to taste like on my tongue? What's the muzzle going to feel like in my teeth? And I was ready to end it there. And the only thing that stopped me was I looked over one last time, and my little boy was sleeping with my wife. And I was like, I don't want to wake him up like that.
Yeah.
I put it back. And that was the only thing that stopped me in that moment, was that they were there.
And thank God. Like, I don't think people understand that in those times, it's really easy. It's like, from the outside looking in, you're like, what, why would you do that? Like, everything, you know, seems great. But when you're in that kind of state, it's not a sense of, you want to do that. It just is like the path of least resistance. Like, if you do this, everything becomes peaceful, and there's no more, like, there's no struggle there anymore. And I think a lot of folks that deal with any of this stuff in any version, it doesn't have to be combat related, will never publicly admit it. But I guarantee you, at some points, you've had those ideations where you're like, man, it'd be so much easier if I just, you know, like, all the problems go away if I do. You know, clearly they don't go away, and it would exacerbate it. And you're 100%. I'm so thankful that that didn't happen, because I really think that you have a mission and a purpose, or at least it's clear to me that you do, with what you're doing. How did you get out of the VA prison? Like, how did you get out?
I ended up spending around 40 days there, and I was fortunate to have the support of my family. My parents both worked in healthcare. My wife is a trauma nurse, And so they had experience in that realm, and they were able to advocate and say, hey, we have the place, we can take him, we can keep 24-hour supervision on him. Like, we have a place he can go and take care of him. And that was a huge burden on them, you know, to deal with somebody going in and out of psychoses. But I was begging. I was like, you know, I tried to escape. I pulled that fire alarm, and you know, apparently somebody had already tried that trick, and they ended up injecting me with a medication called Haldol, which made me feel like I wanted to rip my skin off because there were insects crawling under every single inch of it. All I wanted to do was run up and down the hallway screaming at the top of my lungs. The extreme restlessness, like, just dial your nervous system up to 11, man. That it was fucking torturous. And that's what they give people to try to calm them down. It's
like everything
madness,
is upside down there.
And eventually I came to out of this just drug-induced fucking drool fest that they put me into, and they ended up escorting me into a room in that facility and signing paperwork. You know, I'm literally drooling on myself. The attorney puts a pen in my hand and I'm just scribbling. And I ended up signing documentation that, one, committed me to the facility. It declared me permanently mentally defective. It stripped me of my constitutional right to bear arms. Having been someone who had been entrusted, you know, with a high-level security clearance in a fighter jet, now I'm not allowed to have a weapon to defend my family and provide wild game for my family. I can't take my kid to buy him his first weapon to teach him how to hunt. Like, it really fucked me up. Just that, like, being stripped of my humanity, being stripped of my civil liberties. I'm now on the law enforcement information network as if I committed a felony. If I'm ever pulled over, my name comes up in their database. My concealed carry permit was immediately revoked as soon as I got back home. That was the first thing that was in the mail. They take forever to get it to you, but as soon as they want it back, man,
it's just like the military. When you owe them money, they're going to take it real quick.
But yeah, I was in a fucking dark place. I when they got me out, my family finally got me out. Like, I was just a broken human, man. The only emotions I could feel were just a deep sense of betrayal from the government I had served, anger, bitterness. My little kids would come up and try to play with me, and I would just tell them to leave me alone. I could barely do the dishes. I was so non-functional from all the meds. The meds got ramped up big time after that. I don't even know what all I was on. Shit ton of quetiapine still, plus more. And my cognitive abilities just continued to degrade. I was masking, like, the only way I could feel any semblance of peace was through copious amounts of cannabis and alcohol and just self-medicating on top of all the meds. And I was just in a shitty place, man. And my life was unraveling. I was on the verge of divorce. And I was fortunate that I stumbled across the book called How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. And while I couldn't hardly read more than a sentence without forgetting it, I got enough out of that book after rereading that, hey, there's this thing called psychedelic assisted therapy. So there may be a different way to approach this, what's going on with me. And again, at the VA, it was still, nope, you just got to take your pills.
Like, why try something that clearly is working for other people?
All the clinical studies, like, look at all this shit that's been funded by the pharmaceutical industry and tampered with that shows this works to make money. Why wouldn't we trust that?
What was the name of the book that you read?
How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan.
Okay, How to Change Your Mind. We're going to put that in the show notes if people are interested in reading that book.
And initially, you know, I found just a local person that provided psilocybin ceremony. And that was, you know, that was a turning point. It didn't fix everything by using that psychedelic, but it was like, to use Michael Pollan's analogy from that book, it was like a fresh snowfall all over all these ruts of negative emotions and behaviors that had just become who I was. And it put me at the top of that mountain with my skis on and gave me the opportunity to take a new path. And so I started to see the correlation between the psych meds and the decline of my mental faculties, the insanity of that conventional mental health approach. And so I decided to take it on a different way, which was largely through improving my nutrition and health, getting myself off of all those substances, the alcohol, the cannabis, the psych meds, and really just took a deep dive on my health, started really looking deeply at the importance of my sleep. I read the book called Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. I can't recommend that book enough. It really opened my eyes to just how vital good night's sleep is. And it gives you practical guidance on how to improve to get better sleep.
And that's called Why We Sleep?
Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker.
Okay, we'll put that one in the show notes as well. And
so I started to just improve my lifestyle at the baseline, and then continued to pursue a more serious use of the psychedelic assisted therapy through the nonprofit organizations that are helping guys. I initially reached out to one called Veteran Solutions. It's run by Marcus and Amber Capone. He's a former SEAL that was, sick of losing all of his friends from suicide and had profound healing through psychedelics. I applied to their program. However, I didn't really qualify, as I wasn't a SEAL. I wasn't in the Special Forces community. I didn't have multiple combat deployments as they require, because there's so many people trying to get access to this stuff. There's not enough funding to fund everybody to go to a different country and experience this. But they put me in contact with Warrior Angels Foundation, and those guys, I ended up doing a fundraiser for them. And I shared my story for the first time publicly, thinking that nobody wanted to hear about me. I'm a piece of shit. I had gone to a really dark place, but I put together a little blurb about some of the stuff I'm telling you now, what I had been through. And I had just an outpouring of support. I didn't have any social media at the time, but I just text messaged it out and emailed it to some of my contacts in my phone that I still had. And within about a week, I had raised almost $10,000 on this fundraiser page for Warrior Angels. And those guys invited me down to Texas. And that's where I just met an entire community of other veterans that had gone through the same shit. There were so many SEALs and Green Berets and Special Forces dudes and just pilots and just badass human beings who had been elite performers in the military, had been exposed to all this shit that fucked our brains up. And then when we actually had to cry uncle and go for help, we got pumped full of pills, a PTSD diagnoses, and then spent years having our lives just fall apart, And I heard the story again and again and again. And I realized we're on the right path. That the VA system, the conventional approach is fucked. We are not fucked. This is the right way. And so through that, I met an entire network of people that helped me gain access to all these modalities that are out there that are just not available through conventional insurance or the VA. I got to get access to a traumatic brain injury clinic down in Dallas through an organization called Defenders of Freedom. They funded me for this 2-week-long trip down there, where I got all sorts of stuff, from a really deep dive on my lab work to see where my physiology was off, and then access to an incredibly gifted physician, Dr. Charlene Gaudet, who was able to interpret those lab results and give me customized nutraceutical protocol to help fix everything that was off in my brain. And then, they had a whole ton of modalities there. There's stuff from standing on one foot while you recite the alphabet backwards while you play catch. There's all these brain games and treatments that you do while you're there. And over the course of 2 weeks, my sleep improved significantly. All the cognitive testing that you do at the beginning, then you do it at the end again, and everything improved. I received access to psychedelic assisted therapy through Heroic Hearts Project, and went down to Peru to experience ayahuasca, which was, next level eye-opening experience.
Yeah, that one, I'm ultra interested in that. And I don't know if I'm sure there's a sacred component of it that if you don't feel comfortable sharing, it's okay. What was that like?
I'm happy to share. It was profound. It put me in touch with something that I wasn't even looking for. I was approaching all this from sort of a scientific, hey, this is supposed to help with the symptoms of PTSD. But through ayahuasca, I came in touch with this divinity, or whatever you want to call it, something much greater than myself. And it wasn't just believing in it. It was experiencing it firsthand. And that not only put me in touch with something much deeper, connecting me to everything around, but it also gave me a new sense of purpose. It really opened my eyes to like, all this has happened for a reason. You've been through this hardship to prepare you for what's to come.
Yeah,
and
clearly.
And I realized like, I'm here to share this. I'm here to share this story because I can articulate what I've been through. I can share this dark journey that I've been through, and I can be that voice that I needed when I was in that dark, dark pit, hopeless and lost for years. And so that's kind of become my mission, is to share this, because it's happening to so many people, veterans and on the civilian side. People are really struggling with their health.
Cops especially. I mean,
oh yeah,
cops and firefighters and EMTs. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's plaguing our society, and so the ayahuasca was just an eye opener to all of that, and really it helped put me in touch with this authentic version of myself, and strip away all the bullshit, man. And I can't tell you how profound that was. And the combination of healing the physiology side of things through hyperbaric oxygen therapy, nutraceuticals, getting the lab work so you can actually see what's off and addressing those issues. And then you have the psychedelic assisted piece of that as well, which not only puts you in touch with something, that's a spiritual healing that I wasn't even looking for, or really even believed in before all of it. I called myself agnostic prior. Like, I always said I was like a dog looking at the moon. Like, I suspect there's something bigger than myself, but I don't understand it. But through that, it was much deeper connection with something. And that combination has been profound. And I really think it's the way for people to heal. And the psychedelics also, they rapidly accelerate neuroregeneration and healing of the nervous system. So they reduce inflammation, and they also help your body produce compounds that help your neural tissue regrow, especially with ibogaine, which has been really and psilocybin as well, has shown that it causes your brain to regrow and heal rapidly. It heals your nervous system. So there's massive benefits of these. And of course, the FDA and the pharmaceutical industry are doing everything they can to shut the shit down, man. It's a threat to the business model.
Yeah. My childhood, he's one of my oldest and best friends. He just got back from doing his ibogaine journey in Mexico, and he will be joining us next week.
Nice.
And I mean, he's like fresh. I remember he texted me. It was January 2nd. He's heading down to Mexico. He's in the airport, and we're just, sending memes and stuff that friends do. And, he's like, I was like, hey dude, this is going to be good for you. It's going to be good. And he wanted me to go with him, and I wish I would have went, but I was kind of too chicken shit. And I was like, I think I pawned it off on like family vacation, which we were on vacation, but, so he goes down there, he does the ibogaine, and the day he gets back, he blows up my phone. And like, how you can't hear a text, but you can feel a text, like by the way people write stuff, and the way he wrote what he wrote, I was like, dude, this is a different guy. And then we briefly talked on the phone, and he's like, dude, and he was going through a horrendous marriage struggle, and it just was in an ultra dark place. And like that completely, I'm not saying he doesn't still have issues and days, but it's been a massive, massive turnaround. And he's going to come on the show to talk about it. And he's going to actually have his, I don't know what they call it. Is it like a proctor, or like maybe shaman is too far, but the guy that does the administration of it, and like a generic
terms, like a facilitator.
Yeah, facilitator.
It can be a ceremonial individual, like an indigenous person who's more of a shaman. It can be, somebody who just has experience in that. But a facilitator is kind of the.
This is his facilitator, and he's they're both Marines, and one, he became the facilitator became a psychologist, and is helping guys with this. So
nice.
I'm super excited to hear his story, and hearing your story, that when you're talking about it gave you purpose. It's very clear that your purpose didn't begin when you took the ayahuasca. You know, when we talk about, you know, in aviation accidents, we talk about Swiss cheese, like the Swiss cheese model.
Oh, yeah.
You know how it lines up.
Oh, yeah.
Like your Swiss cheese lined up way before any of this, way before you even were become a naval aviator. This was, you know, if you believe in this kind of thing, was always kind of the plan. Like this was the trajectory that this is just your, you know, as my granddad used to say, this is just your road ho, man. Like this is, do you know Adam Peters? Did you do his show?
I don't believe
yet.
so. What's the show called?
The Strategic Veteran. So no. Adam actually lives here. We live in Central Florida, and Adam lives like 40 minutes away from me. I had no idea that he lived this close. And we both have podcasts, and we run in, you know, our Venn diagram of our listeners kind of overlap, if that makes sense. He's really geared on veteran entrepreneurs, and I'm kind of more in the shit talking, mental health, normalizing, we're all fucked up space. But he did he went to Peru and did the whole shamanic ayahuasca thing. And it's interesting that you guys almost verbatim had the same experience. Like he said, his words, not mine, is, and he'll be on our show to talk about it, is, he learned how to love again. And I you know, when you kind of, I'm not like super woo woo, like love and light, bro, but like there's some love and light shit going on. And so,
dude, it opens you to that. It takes military guys who would never like talk about this shit or believe it, but it does. It's like what I felt was like this fucking dark crust that had just formed around my heart through all these years of negative experiences, and the military training just toughens that up, and to shield you, that all just bursts away, man. Your heart just opens to love, man. And it's profound. And you know, and I get it if people don't believe this and they're like, oh, this motherfucker is going to go get the chakras tattooed on his ass now. Like, no, you don't have to be like the woo woo new age hippie to really see this, man. And I think that's what's really profound about the veterans that are experiencing this, is they're not like that at all. They're level-headed, sort of practical people, and they're just getting profound experience that's opening a lot of people's eyes to what this stuff is. And it's not some hippie bullshit, you know, stigmatized thing from the 70s that everybody needs to be afraid of. These are healing medicines that have been around and used since prehistory, you know, and we're actually in a bizarre time right now in our culture that these indigenous medicines aren't part of our community, that we don't have ceremony and a relationship with these things, because the communities that do, the indigenous people that do, are so much more grounded and coming from a healthier place and so full of love, man. And when you see those communities and the way those people are, you're like, holy fuck, you see the contrast between where we are in American and Western society that's kind of overtaking the planet right now. And it's like, wait a second. Like,
this is not
going in the wrong way right now.
This is not how we were supposed to live. And Adam says, like literally, I like, it's a testament to what it really is, because he says almost verbatim the same sentiment. And, you know, when you talk about ceremonial things, you know, slightly off topic, but, you know, prior to maybe the 80s, you know, there were certain things that were considered ceremonial things, like, for instance, funerals, you know, and at least where I grew up, when you would see a funeral procession come past, they would ride with their lights on. All cars have daytime running lights now, but back then they didn't. But everybody would pull over as a sign of respect for the dead, and then they would take, you know, the convoy would go to the and there would be a funeral, and a funeral was like, there would be a church service, and then there's a graveside thing. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because ceremonies and you know, ceremonial things or rituals serve a purpose. And this point, and a lot of people, when they die, they want to have a celebration of life, and that's great. I think that's a good thing. And how I'm going to connect these two is, is those rituals and ceremony, especially in a funeral. A funeral is designed as a ceremonial grieving period. And when you kind of skip over those little, rituals or things you do, it further disconnects you. And every time that we that's so old fashioned or stupid, we get further and further away from our purpose. It's like, you ever been feeling like shit and you take your shoes off and you walk in like the sand at the beach or dirt, and like you physically feel better, like, right.
Yeah.
And then, every time I feel like shit, and Adam, the guy I was telling you, is a huge, he's like, dude, you got to go ground, bro. Get out there and ground. And Adam's not like a little dude. He was an infantryman in the Army. He's like a 6'2" huge dude. He looks like the bass player from Soundgarden. If you or not Soundgarden, Faith No More, the dude with the really long hair. Anyways,
look it up.
Yeah, if you're into '90s rock, you could look up the bass player from Faith No More. His name is I forgot his name, but the guy from Soundgarden is named Kim Thiel. But when you go out there and you walk in the sand at the beach, or you put your feet in the dirt in your front yard, and you will, on some level, feel better, because I think we're living in about the most disconnected period of human existence that's ever been. We're people are disconnected from one another. We're so busy and involved in our own lives that we have a society that kind of forces it upon us, from the school we go to and our lifestyles and our work. Like we're self-consumed. And really one of the biggest lessons I've learned from this whole healing process is the further we drift from nature and what is natural, the sicker we become. And that goes across the board for all these things, and like you're saying, when you reconnect to nature just by putting your feet in the sand, or going for a walk outside, or breathing fresh air, or getting the sunlight, or eating a food that was grown in the soil down the street at the local farmers, instead of in some fucking massive mega industrial Monsanto
facility where it's coated in Roundup and all this shit. Like, there's a difference when you're getting what is natural in your body and surrounding you. We can heal and restore.
Yeah. And I would recommend folks too, when you're sourcing your food, and again, this isn't from a place of like, hey man, source locally, and like that's good.
Yeah. It's beyond just some hipster bullshit.
This isn't a skinny jean moment where this is real talk. 'Cause I was in Europe over Christmas, and, my son was like, Dad, we got to go to McDonald's. I heard the fries are different here. So on New Year's Eve, we end up going to McDonald's in London, and because it was the only thing open, and we get some fries, and oh shit, the fries taste different than America. And we were kind of tabulating all the food we were eating, and we were like, no, there's no way that their candy is different from our candy. And we're like, I mean, we've been to Europe before, but we never like looked at labels. So my wife and I are looking at all these labels and taking pictures to compare them when we get back home. And our food is pumped full of garbage, like the dyes. And I mean, it's
poison, man. It's poison.
And you have to ask, like, well, why is that? Like, because it's a money thing. Once again, it's like, it's cheap to make.
It's cheaper, and the same people who run those food companies got their hands in the pharmaceutical companies. Yeah. They make the food that makes you sick, and they make profit off the meds they got to sell you to deal with it, man. It's dark, man. And I don't think it's necessarily like this evil force that's conspiring. It's just business, man. It's just business.
Anytime humans get power, it's always going to be like that. So you wrote the book, Phoenix, is it Phoenix Revival? Yeah, I want to say Phoenix Rising. You might be able to see it. Yeah, there it goes.
Got it up there.
Is that a wakeboard back there? Little wake surfboard?
It's like about a 5'6", 5'8" thruster.
Okay, yeah. I grew up surfing in a little town.
That's called a fugo fish.
Yeah,
that's what this one's called.
I can see the fish. Yeah, there we go. That looks like a balsa wood inlay in there, or like
I actually built that.
Really?
It was something that I started doing as I was kind of recovering. I had a buddy gave me a big old chunk of this fucking cool East Indian rosewood, which you can see is the heart center, or the sunrise there. But I wasn't a woodworker at the time, but I started making stuff and eventually started carving these hollow wooden surfboards. Is something I did to kind of try to keep my sanity as I was going through all this shit. But I glass them so they're fully surfable and rideable and everything. But dude, this one's made out of Polonia, is the light wood, which is almost as light as balsa wood, but it's a lot stronger. It's what they used to make boats out of. And then that's redwood from California, where I was stationed when I started building these. And then the center is that East Indian rosewood. In Michigan, are you close to Lake Superior or Lake Michigan? I'm right next to Lake Michigan where I live. So we've got good surfing. Yeah, you can surf Lake the Michigan. Wind swell. Yeah. And Lake Superior's got some serious stuff up there too. Yeah. Yeah. I grew up in a town called Wilmington, North Carolina, Wrightsville Beach. And so I grew up surfing, and now I live here in Cocoa Beach, Florida. Oh, and, nice. Home of Kelly Slater, right? Yeah, there's a big statue from him downtown Cocoa Beach. And nice. It's it's funny because my daughter surfs and we try to get out there, but I'm you get caught up with work and life, and and I'm old and my joints hurt and I got a bad hip, and but I got this 10-foot, like 10-2 just monster longboard that weighs like 50 pounds, and it's the rails are like old log. Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, like I could put like my wife, me, and my son probably could all fit on there and still ride that thing. So every now and again I get out there with my Santa Claus beard and try to shred a little bit, but I really don't. I'm just that old guy, that old creepy guy still surfing. But oh man, that's great. There was an organization called Operation Surf that I went into when I was still in California. I just showed up to the beach that they were doing one at it in Santa Cruz one day, because I wasn't that far from the coast when I was in the war. And but those guys, that program really helped kind of keep me going, gave me something to live for when I was suicidal. Was just getting on the waves and being around the upbeat group of people that are typically surfers. Was the power really of salt water, just from a cleansing perspective, when you go out there, and then just the kind of, you don't want to go on like a super heavy, rough day, because then you just get beat to shit. But like if it's a really nice day, there is a blood pressure lowering element of that. Oh, totally. So, but talking about Phoenix Revival, I always keep wanting to say Phoenix Rising, but it's Phoenix Revival. Phoenix Revival. And Phoenix Rising would have worked too, though. Yeah. Well, what I like about it is, if you look at the cover, it's like almost like a psychedelic. It's a picture with but you don't have the Jehemic, what do you call that? The Jehemic's helmet? The Jehemic's. Yeah, that's my regular helmet. Yeah. Actually, my friend Bryce Hansen, he's a former Green Beret, but a really talented artist. He was actually creating he had a series he was doing, but he takes digital art and then he paints it. Oh, okay, cool. And so he had me get in all the flight gear that I still have. They wouldn't let me keep the Jehemic's helmet, so that's just my regular one. Yeah. But he took that digital image of me and in my gear, and then turned it into a painting. And I was like, dude, this is so cool. We should use it for the book cover. Yeah. And so it's awesome. How we got it. So the book, how was that process, writing the book? Was it cathartic, or did it help you get your thoughts out, or what? Yeah. What was that like? It really was. It was very therapeutic. And after the psychedelics, I kind of had this mission to share my story, and I wasn't a writer by any means. Like, I hadn't been the greatest English student ever, but I just kind of figured it out. And at first I just kind of like brain dumped over the course of about 9 months. I would just write a little bit here and there. Some nights I'd sit down and be up all night typing. Other nights, I might just get an hour or two in. But over the course of about 9 months, I came up with this 60,000 word manuscript of a rough draft. And it was just kind of this chronological brain dump of what all I'd been through. It had a long ways to go, but at least I had something. And as time went on, I had friends help me edit it. I got the Grammarly software on my computer to help improve some of it. And little by little, it just kind of came together, and eventually figured out the publishing process, which was probably more work than the actual writing of the book is just figuring out how to get the damn thing published. And especially now marketing it has been a big thing.
On the book, it's basically the story that we just kind of talked about, the ejection, that thing. I've already ordered it. I highly recommend people to go get it. At a minimum, to support Kegan's mission. But the best place, I think, is Amazon is the best place to get it, or is there a better place? Yeah,
Amazon's the best place to get it. You can get it hardcover, paperback, ebook, or it just released on Audible as well. But that helps. And especially if you enjoy it or not, leave a review.
Yeah.
And I think it's not only the story of the ejection and a lot of what we're talking about, but more importantly, it gives people practical tools that are going through the same shit that I went through, and gives you ways to help yourself. It's got a whole list of resources in there and ways to get yourself out of whatever challenges you're facing that I think can help a lot of people. And that's why I wrote it. It's something I think can help lift. And even if it's just one dude that reads that book and like puts the gun down,
success.
That's enough, man.
Did you narrate the audiobook, or did somebody else do it?
I did.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I've got a family friend that he's got a really nice recording studio, like a $5,000 microphone and all this other shit. And so I went over to his place and he helped record it.
Yeah, that's great. It's always, and it's doing pretty good. It's got 5 stars right now, and just because I know it's going to come up. How did you get your call sign Smurf? Like, where did that come from?
So yeah, that was something that happened because of the ejection. Actually, the morning I was walking on that ejection, the day that I had the ejection, January 15, 2014, now about 11 years back. But one of the more senior pilots in the squadron's like, man, you've been in the squadron for almost a year. You just haven't done anything dumb enough yet to earn a call sign. And I had played the smallmouth big ears card very well, which I highly recommend for most anybody who's a new guy in an aviation squadron. Just like, shut the fuck up and work and do your job. And so I had done that, and I hadn't really stuck out. I didn't have any like massive like things that people could make fun of about me. And there were probably 4 or 5 newer guys in the squadron from when I had joined, and a lot of those guys already had call signs. So it was kind of unusual to not have a call sign. But on that same day when, all this went down, that's exactly what we were talking about that morning in the ready room. And now find myself a week later, I'm in a coma, and a bunch of my squadron mates and family and friends are in the ICU waiting room, like waiting to hear, is this guy going to come back to life? And Basil, the same guy who said I hadn't done anything dumb enough to earn a call sign, kind of piped up and he goes, oh, he's a scrappy motherfucker. He'll be all right. And it kind of lifted the mood of the ICU waiting room. And they took scrappy motherfucker and they shortened it down to this makeshift acronym, SMURF. And then because it's the military these days, you got to have a politically correct cover story, which was I'm a short guy that turned blue from hypothermia.
I get it.
So that's how they got it approved. But it really stands for scrappy motherfucker.
So do you have to get the call signs approved by like the CO, or is there like a call sign board or something?
I think at the time I was going through, it was the skipper had to approve it. And I bet I wouldn't be surprised if that's raised to like the admiral level at this point. Like there was a big debacle actually at one of the squadrons that I was in, the Nighthawks, where one of the maintenance officers got a call sign that he didn't like, which I don't know why they were giving the maintenance officer a call sign necessarily anyways, but they gave him one that he did not like, and he ended up going on like a freaking rampage about it. I think he started an IG, like internal investigation on the squadron because people were making fun of him and he didn't want to be made fun of.
And then that probably
I don't know all the details exactly, but it got to the point where they're like, they started just like shutting down everybody's call sign. They were like, it turned into a shit show that has long-term effects on the military. That's
the military way. When one person shits themselves, we all got to wear diapers,
Dude, the knee-jerk reaction of it was absurdity.
Yeah. The call sign thing is like a unique Navy, and I think Air Force does it too. We don't do that in the Army. In the Marine Corps, maybe they do. I don't know if they do that. Usually our call signs are mission-based, and like
Yeah.
you can, that call sign is that way. It's the same for the ground force all the time, that they know when whatever your call sign shows up, they
That makes
know,
sense.
oh, these guys are doing this mission, or they're from this. It's a unit call sign.
Yeah.
So, and you would just take on your suffix would be some units. Your suffix denotes your position in the we would call it a battalion or a company, but it sometimes the suffix doesn't. It just means your chalk position or where you're flying in the flight. So
Yeah.
But I always thought it was interesting. All the naval. I work with a NFO, and actually an NFO and a pilot, and they both still use their call signs from the Navy, like we call them their call signs, you know.
Yeah.
So I always thought that was interesting. And then over to the book again. What's the you can go on Amazon, you can get the book, audiobook. Do you still, is there any difference if somebody buys an audiobook? Do you still see that revenue, or is there a slight difference in that?
Yeah, I think I see revenue off of it. There's a slight difference between, I think, the paperback and the hardcover, but it's all good.
Yeah. And the only reason I say that is because we want to support you and your book, and I think it can definitely help people. I'm excited to read it. And again, I apologize that I didn't get it in time to digest it.
It's a big commitment. But I have heard it. People reading it say it goes real quick. It's not a long read.
Yeah.
It kind of flies by.
Yeah, I'm excited to read it. In our website, we have a reading list of all of our recommended readings. We'll add that. We'll link to it in the show notes. It'll also be on the website. You can go to aloneandunafraid.org. Go over to, I wish Tyler was here. It's like book list or recommended reading or something like that. And there'll be links to all the books that we actually, the ones you just talked about, I'll add those into the library. What are you doing now? Like, how are things going now? Like with life?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a profound change, man. Like, you know, I got my family back, my wife back, you know, like, and it was a process over the course of years. You know, it's not like you just take psychedelics and all of a sudden you're better. It takes time. But if you can start to rebuild your lifestyle, your habit patterns, and your behaviors, it has a profound effect as you integrate that into your life. And now you could do psychedelics, and then you could just jump back into the same life, doing the same shit, and you're going to maybe get worse. But the really important piece is what you do with that experience. And because I've implemented, you know, way healthier lifestyle choices and just, you know, I'm a meditation coach now through the Wisdom Dojo, which takes veterans that have gone through a big psychedelic retreat, and then it teaches you meditation practice. That's been profound. And the meditation is just as powerful, if not more powerful, than the psychedelics. And that's just something you can access, you know, very easily. And especially if you have an experience with psychedelics, it opens up a pathway that I think makes meditation a much deeper experience.
Have you done any breath work or any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's part of the program. I've also done like Wim Hof, holotropic breathing. I like to sauna and cold plunge and do breath work with that. That's like something I do a couple times a week. As far as professionally, you know, I coach meditation. I'm a motivational speaker. I actually just got connected with Eagle Rise as a speaking bureau. So I'm hopefully going to start really growing this into something real consistent and real. I've been doing it over the past 2.5 years at everything from corporate retreats, mastermind events, nonprofit fundraisers, universities. I did a high school commencement ceremony and all sorts of stuff in between. But I'm really trying to turn that into like a full-time gig, is because it pays pretty good and gets to share my story.
Yeah. How do people get in touch with you if they want to book you to come talk? What's the best way?
Yeah, head over to my website. It's the easiest way. It's just kegangill.com, KEGANGILL.com. I know if you might be able to see it right on the screen there. I can see it on here, but I don't know if that'll translate over.
It will. Yeah. And it'll link to in the show notes as well.
Cool. But yeah, head over there. You can get in touch with me on there. You can also find me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn under Kegan Gill. You can find me on Instagram at Kegan Smurf Gill. So just my first name, my call sign, and my last name all mushed together. But please reach out. If you're going through some stuff, please reach out. I'm in the process of building a coaching program as well, so I can help give people some material and guidance if they're going through their own journey and they want a little assistance with it.
And that's kind of how we got connected, I think, because Nick O'Kelly just like slid into your DMs, right? Like you guys, how did you guys? Yeah, he just said, he messaged, I think, just on social media on Instagram, and we got talking, and it sounded like he was going through like a lot of the same shit, and so I was lucky to connect with him and help him go through what he's going through. Now he's kind of on the same path, man. Yeah, he's doing great. He's actually the first sponsor of our show. Nice. So yeah, he is also my financial advisor. Full disclosure, he's my kick ass. He handles my money and my dad's and my mom's and my sister's and 2 dudes I work with. And I would say if you guys are looking for a financial advisor, call Nick. I'm gonna have to hit him up, man. Yeah, dude. Like I'm not shitting you. Like he made me money this year. Like my dad was like, "Hey, Nick's okay, man. We made some money." He's like, "I made some money. How much did you make?" And I looked at my little portfolio, and I mean, look, I'm not like Scrooge McDuck in anything over here, but like, I made it. It went up, and it went up considerably, and some of that's the market, and some of that's you just got a good dude in your corner that's looking out for you, that's not out to, he's not the kind of guy that's out to rip you off and take advantage of you. He comes from the community that we all come from. He's a trusted advisor. I would highly recommend, if you're looking for a financial advisor, to give him a shout. And I'm not just saying that because he sponsors the show. He's a friend of mine, and I typically, he's a great dude. Yeah, he's a good dude. I don't want to do business with people that I have to be able to trust people. And so I think that's important. And we want to do the same with you. If we can support you in your speakership, please let us know how we can. And, we'll put all that in the show notes. We'll link to your website and all your socials. And so you'll see Kegan stuff come up in our, and Tyler's the social media guy. I think social media is rotting our brain from the inside. Totally. Dude, totally is. That whole midair collision in Washington, fucking out of control. Like the amount of retarded idiots that are putting their opinions about shit out, just man. The dumbest stuff, and all the speculation, man. It's absurdity. I mean, it's so polarizing, and and the crazy thing is, a lot of these things on LinkedIn, especially, these are like bots. They're not even real people. I had a friend. He's in this war on LinkedIn about this midair collision, and I go on the guy he's warring with LinkedIn page. Dude doesn't have a profile picture, has 4 connections, and every single one of his posts are shit posts. I'm like, dude, this guy is some Russian dude in a basement, like just trolling to divide America. Like this is part of a strategy of a nation state like China or Russia to sow civil discontent in our society, it's a tool. I use it for marketing and connecting to people, and I've gotten in touch with people on there, but it's definitely something that can just suck you into a freaking vortex if you let it, man. Yep. Well, Kegan, one last thing. If you were to give somebody that's just in a dark place, like one actionable thing, or what's something that helped you get through, like a dark thing, or what's like one like easy actionable thing that you would recommend that anybody can do and they could implement like today? Yeah. I mean, the very first thing is just realize that you get to make a conscious choice in every moment, regardless of what has happened in the past, whatever you're afraid of coming in the future.
in this moment, you get to choose. You get to either feed all that fear and anxiety and depression, or you can have a little kernel of hope, and you can create that just by closing your eyes and imagining, where do you want to be? If things could go right, what is that? And then just feed that little ember. And, you know, this is something that happened to me when I was paralyzed in the hospital, being told I could never walk or use my arms. Was I had this opportunity to jump on all the dark shit that was going on, and I could have gone into a very bad place. And I did at times. But what I also chose to feed was this little ember of, what if I got back in the jet? What would that be like? What would it feel like? So in any given moment, you get to make that decision. Do you want to feed the positivity, the optimism, or do you want to feed that negative shit that's going to drag you down? And if you can feed the good, and then you can take consistent action and have the discipline to continue on that path in doing what you know you need to do to get better, you can get through so much shit, and realize whatever dark shit you're going through right now is only giving you a bigger opportunity to climb even higher than you've ever experienced in your life. It's preparing you for something. And I know that sounds woo-woo maybe, you know, but the darkest times that we go through in our lives help prepare us to become the best version of ourselves that we've ever been. They are lessons. They are not a punishment. And things that you can do, anybody can do, that you don't need access to anything fancy, is just take control of your health. The most foundational thing is sleep. I can't recommend enough that book, Why We Sleep, by Matthew Walker. Doing things like working yourself off of caffeine, alcohol, cannabis, nicotine, pharmaceutical drugs. If you can start to work yourself off of that stuff, you will see marked improvement in your sleep quality. And that's the foundation of all of our health, is sleep. If we're not sleeping well, our shit's going to fall apart. And it might not happen immediately, but over time, it'll accelerate your aging process when you're not sleeping well. And it'll cause detrimental effects to your mental, physical, everything. So prioritizing sleep and really carving out the time in your life to get some rest. And it's going to take lifestyle changes. There's no easy pill to all this. It really takes completely reworking shit so that it works for you. It takes time. It takes consistent effort. You don't have to do it all at once, but just take little steps incrementally, and you might be amazed at how far you get in a year of just taking little changes throughout the weeks. Sleep is a big one. As we talked about earlier, nutrition. You don't have to be on a diet. It's not about calorie restrictions or anything. It's just eat real food.
Yeah, and drink water.
Look at the label. And drink clean water. Yeah, like if you pour it out of the city tap and it smells like chlorine and fluoride, don't drink that shit.
Yeah.
It's poisoning your gut microbiome, which is one of the most important components of your health, is these trillions of organisms, microorganisms that live within us that affect our epigenetics, gene expression. By nourishing that and cultivating a rainforest of diversity in our gut microbiome, by eating the right foods, by eating whole, real foods, fermented foods like kimchi or sauerkraut, yogurts, cheeses even, kefir, these things can help to regrow really healthy gut bacteria. There's probiotics and prebiotics that can help with that. But when you get all that shit working for you and you stop poisoning it with chlorine and fluoride and food that's coated in glyphosate and all these artificial shit non-foods that are in, I'd say 95% of the shit that's at the grocery store, all that stuff starts to regenerate. And when you feed your body healthy stuff, that feeds your cells. And that literally becomes what you are. What you are, what we eat is what we are. Like that's a no shit scientific fact. And it takes about 7 years for all the cells in your body to completely regenerate.
Wow.
And if you take actions to start eating real food instead of putting shit in that's degrading your health and sapping your nutrients, over time, it has a profound effect. You know, some good options, if you have a local farmer near you, is probably about the best option. Go talk to the farmers at the farmers market and go, hey, how do you grow your food? What's your soil like? Are you pouring herbicides and pesticides on your food? Organic is an okay option, although that whole industry is getting corrupt, but it's better than the conventional produce, which is absolutely, beyond a shadow of the doubt, going to be coated in glyphosate, herbicides and pesticides, and grown out of chemical fertilizers. So where you got something that's big and sweet and it looks like an apple, it's completely nutrient void, and it's not helping you. In general, shopping around the perimeter of the grocery store, getting things that are whole foods, real fruit, real vegetables, good quality meat, stuff that's not grown in some industrial facility where the animals are trapped indoors eating foods that their bodies are not meant to eat, pumped full of antibiotics. That if you're eating a sick animal, it completely changes the fat structure of that animal, and it's going to make you sick. But if you can get stuff that's 100% grass fed, even better yet, if you're a hunter, go out, get your own wild game. If you can meet local farmers that grow this stuff, it's oftentimes way better than the shit that you find, that's industrial processed from these animals that live in CAFOs, these poop farms, basically. So those are some really big ones. Just getting sunlight, regular exercise. You don't have to be a freaking elite athlete, but if you can go for a walk for 10 or 15 minutes in the morning and get some sunlight, that has profound effect on your health. And then reconnecting community is a huge one. Like, get back out there, find something you like to do, get around other people, especially if you've just left the military and you've lost that sort of camaraderie. Pick up a new hobby that gets you around other people and gets you connected to society. Because when we try to cut ourselves off, which is so natural, when we go through dark times, we just want to be alone. We kind of shrivel up and die, man, from the inside out.
Yeah, you got to have a tribe. Man. Like, yeah. And I think everybody that gets out of the military, you're not going to hear a word I'm saying until you go through it, and you're like, oh, that's what those dudes were talking about. Like, right. I feel like everybody, like, I try to pregame them as much as I can. I'm like, no, don't, hey, make sure you do this. And, don't do this. And, but everybody's got it figured out until they don't. And then that's the only way you learn is, it's kind of discovery learning out here. And,
and I know I'm throwing a lot at you. There's a lot more detail on this in the book. And if you pick up a copy, it can really help you. And like you said, we'll have some good resources in the show notes of great resources from that Why We Sleep. Another really good one, How to Change Your Mind, if you want to get into the psychedelics. And then another really good one that just came out is called Good Energy by Callie and Casey Means. And that gets into a lot more deep dive on like the health and nutrition and a lot of the same stuff that we're talking about. But man, those are a few books that can change your life, no doubt.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to highlight on that you said, that's a common theme of everybody that we talk to, cause we did this podcast, it kind of started out as just like an echo chamber for me because the therapy thing really wasn't working. So I started the podcast because I was like, man, I'll just start recording myself talking and I'll feel better. And then it turned into a podcast. And then, but one of the things that of every guest we've had that comes on, it takes me a long time to understand this and apply it, is you have to do the work. You can't step out on the field and be the best. It took you however many years to get into the hole you're in. It's not a rapid thing, so some folks are into journaling. Some folks are, we had a guy from the Australian Special Forces Regiment on, and this dude's name's Tim Thomas. I don't know what episode it's going to be. It's going to be probably episode 31, maybe. Yeah, 31. And Tim is a breathwork coach. And at first I was like, I'm kind of interested in this. I want to hear what this is about. Well, then I download his app and I do the breath work, and I did the work. I charted my sleep patterns. I got a 27% increase in my sleep for the first week. I'm like, oh, man, I'm moving the needle a little bit there. So what I'm trying to say is you got to do the work. You got to put, if you start journaling, you got to journal. The most basic thing is just drink water, man. Like, you have to hydrate for years, my entire time in the 160th, I lived on nicotine or caffeine and hate. That's what I fueled on. And
I think that's a standard issue, man, in the aviation communities of the military.
I would get up in the morning and drink like 2 or 3 cups of coffee, and then a Red Bull at like lunch, and then a Bang at like, 1800, and then we're going to fly that night. Maybe I'd down a 5-hour energy, another Bang or something, and then just not healthy, like not hydrated at all for years. I mean, like years.
That takes a toll.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you got to put the work in, and then you got to you have to look to other folks for health, and guys like Kegan or those guys, like they're already living it. They're leaders in this space. They've already fucked it up and found out the hard way.
Oh yeah.
Like, just take some guidance and direction from leaders that have lived it and have done it, and save yourself a lot of trouble,
And you can be in a dark hole, man. And you can be in a place where you're like, there's no way I can get my health back, but you'd be amazed when you start taking these little simple steps, and you don't have to be perfect, but it really feeds on itself if you can be consistent with it.
Yeah.
And as you improve one of these little things, you'll notice like the sleep gets better because you've changed what you eat. If you get in sunlight in the morning and getting some exercise, you'll notice, I feel a little better. And now I want to eat healthier food. And as you start to eat healthier foods, you'll start to crave that more and more. And the cravings for the shit food will go away to the point where you'll likely look back at those foods and go, that's disgusting. Why would I have eaten that?
Yeah.
And it's profound the way that this stuff kind of snowballs. And while, the hardest parts may be just taking that first step, or even admitting like, hey, I need to do something different. But once you do, and you start down that path, man, it can really help. It can start to propel itself as you progress.
Yeah. And I think folks can look to you as a guy like, dude, you ejected at, 695, was it miles per hour? Fucking fast. And you were paralyzed. You lived through that, got back up, and, like you said, the Disney story ends there. You end up, you really go to prison, like a mental prison, and then you get out and you're still struggling with that. So if anybody is looking at like a case study on the dive that you can pull out of, this is it.
Right.
This is it. So, that's why I think that this message and what you're doing is so incredibly important, and why I'm super grateful that you joined with us on the show. I'm super excited for your book. I wish you nothing but good luck and best wishes. And I think it's going to be awesome. I also think they should do a movie. You should shop a movie, bro.
There's talk of it.
Really?
There's talk of it. Yeah.
Oh, I just made that up, but I mean, like, it would be super cool to be a movie about this.
There's interest in it, and we'll see where it goes. It's out of my hands at this point, but there's some potential big players that are very seriously interested in it.
Who do you think would play you? Who would be your pick to play you?
In this case, I think it'll be Jim Caviezel, the Passion of the Christ dude. Yeah. My friend Tommy's friends with him, and he seems very interested in the story.
Dude, you should get Mel Gibson to direct your movie.
Yeah, well, that's his crew. His crew.
Yeah, because he's doing the second Passion of the Christ is coming out. Or he's working on it right now.
I'm sure those guys got a million. Those guys got a million stories they could do, but they're at least, I'm on their radar. And apparently Jim's got a copy of my book he's reading. So, or I'm saying his last name wrong. Caviezel. Caviezel.
Yeah, the dude. Mel Gibson used him in another movie too.
I know Passion of the Christ. He was the Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
He was in, I want to say, G.I. Jane. Was in The Thin Red Line.
Yeah, he was in the Thin Red Line is how Mel Gibson first noticed him, I think.
Okay.
But the dude is ultra talented, and if you want a crazy story, is listen to his story about filming The Passion of the Christ and how that movie. Because I think he got struck by lightning.
Holy shit!
Didn't he get struck by lightning? And
I don't know.
I might be getting that wrong, but I feel like he got struck by lightning on the set. But that playing Jesus in that movie, like completely, it's a crazy story. You should read if you.
I'll check it out.
If you're taking a dump and you go on Wikipedia, just Google that,
right.
and like, it's a good read, man. It's everybody does that, you know. But dude, I think you're doing great things. I'm really excited to see where you go. I'm rooting for you. We want nothing but the best. Tyler, I wish he was here with us. I think he would have gotten a lot out of this. He can just hear it in real time and be boo-boo lip because he was at home with a little cold or what. I don't know.
I hope he gets feeling better. And yeah, thank you for having me on and helping to share this story, man. And I hope it touches one of your listeners in a way that helps them with their life. You know?
Yeah, 100%, dude. I definitely think it will. You guys can tell everybody your website one more time. It's
just KeganGill.com, which is KEG, like a keg of beer, ANGILL, Gill, like a fish, KeganGill.com. You can find tons of links to my social media. You can get in contact with me and learn more about me on there.
Yeah, and we'll put it all in the show notes. But hey, you got a special event. You're doing a ceremony. You need a guest speaker for, like, you would be. You know, you should do is target like formals, like military balls. Like, you would be a great guest speaker for those. That would be pretty cool. But check Kegan out. Check his socials. We'll have it all in the show notes. You can head over to his website at KeganGill.com and then head over to Amazon and buy the book. Don't be a cheap ass. Go buy the book. Maybe you like Audible. I prefer audiobooks as I have a 40-minute commute. So that's about the only way I get things in these days. Yeah. So get on the road. Get the audiobook. Buy the hardcover. Buy the hardcover because it supports our dudes. Like, don't be a cheap bitch. Go buy the hardcover. Do the right thing. Buy it. So, Kegan, man, it was great having you on. I really appreciate you taking your time. And you know, please give your wife a shout out because I feel like she's probably a fucking rock star. Yeah. And she is, man. She's the reason I'm still here. She really held the ship together, man, when she had every opportunity to bail out of that situation. Yeah. And almost did, man. Yeah. Understandably so. But, well, yeah, she's a freaking angel. She's still in it. So we appreciate her. We're glad she did it. Thanks for spending time with us. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you. Thanks, man. Bye.